Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. Well, if you've been on social media for the past week or so, you can't help but have come across this story published in Lancet. Probably a meat-eating friend may have even forwarded it to you. The conclusion of this study is shocking. It says that it's carbs, not fat, it's carbs that wreck our health, cause us to live shorter lives. And the media has had a field day with this. It's had a field week. It's going to have a field month telling people great things about their habits. Yeah, don't eat carbs, eat more meat, eat more fat if you want to live a longer, healthier life. Well, how can this be true? Because most doctors and health professionals preach, moderate or just eliminate saturated fat because it's supposed to shorten your life. How can carbs actually shorten your life? Well, let's get to the bottom of this. As with any study, to really understand what's going on, you really have to see the research design, the methodology, and it's really hard to get that from just the abstract. Well, unfortunately, Lancet doesn't provide the full text of this study for free to the public, and I don't have a subscription to Lancet. So, fortunately, on Nutrition Wonk, I found a research review of this study. And the cool thing about Nutrition Wonk is they say they don't filter the reviews here through any particular diet or way of eating. They just want to show the science in context. What's most unique about this study is that its subjects were from 18 countries across the globe, and these subjects cover the entire income poverty spectrum. Speaking of which, of the 18 countries, only 3 were from what the researchers defined as high income countries. None were from the United States. The other 15 countries were made up of middle income and low income nations. So you'd think a study whose authors believe we should overturn everything we know about diet, this study would be based on some kind of carefully controlled experiment, a clinical trial. No, far from it. What they did, the research design, was that they gave people a questionnaire to fill out to describe what kind of food they ate. It was just a questionnaire. So anyway, I'm not saying that's bad research design, just stating that out here. Anyway, let's get to what the results were. So they found that those people who, according to their questionnaires, ate the most carbs, and that meant people who ate roughly 75 to 80% of their calories from carbs, that was the highest group there, they found that those people had a roughly 25% higher chance of dying than those that ate the fewest carbs, those that ate under 50% of their calories from carbs. Dying of what, though? There was no particular disease that they were found to die more from. It wasn't cardiovascular disease, diabetes, stroke, or anything like that. It was just death in general. So from that, you'd probably conclude, oh, okay, fats are good for us, right? Well, the researchers compared high-fat diets and high-carb diets when it came to the actual number one killer on the planet, heart disease. And guess what? They found there was actually absolutely no statistical difference between the high-fat group and the high-carb group when it came to cardiovascular disease and death. Okay, but still, how did the researchers find that those who ate the most carbs were at the highest risk of total overall mortality? Well, one interesting part of the study, the researchers found out what foods contributed to each of the macronutrients. Like, say, in most countries, people were getting their carbs from the usual suspects, like, say, like grains and fruits and stuff. They'd get their proteins from meat and so on. Well, that worked out well in most countries, but when we got to the really poor countries, like, say, Bangladesh, rice is where they got the most of all 3 of those macronutrients, carbs, fats, and protein. How in the heck can that be? Well, they're not eating a diverse diet. They're eating just mainly rice. So what the study is correlating is not carbohydrate intake with death. What they're truly correlating is carbohydrate intake with poverty. Check out this chart here from their study. In the far right column, that's those who eat more than 70% of their calories from carbohydrates. And notice how this column is dominated by low-income nations. Yes, the low-income nations eat the most carbohydrates, big time. So what the study has truly shown is that poor people with poor diets and barely enough food to eat and limited, if any, access to modern medical care tend to get sick and die more than people with better circumstances. So all this hype about carbs killing you is just sensationalism. And speaking of carbs, the researchers noted that the carbs that the subjects reported eating tended to be of the refined carb category, not whole food plants. And strangely, the authors made no distinction between refined carbs and whole food carbs. So to the researchers, a donut was the same as an apple. And Dr. Garth Davis chimed in on this very fact on his Facebook page. He says, yeah, junk food is bad for you. And there's no possible possible rational way to draw any comparisons between what the high carb people were eating in this study, which was mainly refined carbs, comparing that with a whole food plant-based diet is absolutely pointless. There's no connection there. So it makes you wonder, what would have these researchers found if they had compared whole food carbohydrates with refined carbs and compared them to fats? Well, it's funny because the same group that put out this study published a second study that very same day that this original study came out in Lancet, but the media did not pick up on it because there was no sensationalistic headline to go along with it. And they found that higher fruit, vegetable, and legume consumption was associated with a lower risk of all-cause mortality. Yes, that's how to live longer, eating these whole food plants. Funny how that wasn't on all these news websites last week. Also worth noting is that the highest fat levels in this study were still actually lower than what's the prevailing levels in the United States and much of Europe. So these headlines telling people in the United States and Europe to eat more fat are not warranted because they're already eating more fat. So really, those sensationalistic headlines that we saw last week should have read that very poor people with barely anything to eat tend to get sick and die more than affluent people with better resources. But that's not going to attract all the attention and hits, right? Anyway, so post your questions and comments down below. What did you think when you first saw these sensationalistic headlines last week? Did you believe they were true? Did a friend or a non-vegan friend forward them to you? Let me know, I'm curious. And hit like if you got some of this video. Let me know that you like me still doing these debunking sorts of videos. I love doing them, as you know. And I guess that's about it. So until next time, ignore these recommendations to up your fat intake and do what you should be doing. Keep it carb, baby. Keep it carb.